Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for June the 27th, 2020. If you would please stand as you are able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the Republic. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Judy Hutchinson.
Here.
Corey Stites.
Present.
Amanda Weaver.
Here.
Judy Sobbins.
Present.
Rachel Grace Holton.
Present.
Scott Holmes. Here. Leah Dozeman.
Here.
Valerie Nasser. Mr. Mayor, we have 7 of 8 here, so we have a quorum. There's one more.
Thank you very much. Councilors, in your packet, you have the minutes of May 23rd, 2022, the City Council meeting minutes, and the study session notes for June 6th, 2022. Are there any changes noted to the minutes? Seeing none, both will stand approved with our thanks as presented. Any changes to the agenda tonight? None, so we'll stay with the same agenda. We have a proclamation tonight. And I would like to invite Karen O'Donnell to the podium. And she's bringing some guests with her, so thank you all. We have a proclamation tonight designating July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of the communities throughout this country, including the City of Wheat Ridge. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas the City of Wheat Ridge proudly owns and maintains 26 parks, 373 acres of open space, 7 miles of multi-use trails, 22 ball fields, 19 playgrounds, multiple recreation facilities, including outdoor aquatic operations, and 3 historic properties. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities, such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education, are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas our parks and recreational areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, and the Wheat Ridge City Council, that July 2022 is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Wheat Ridge. Signed this 27th day of June, 2022. I'm really proud, pleased to have our Parks and Recreation, one of the other P's here, and her staff. Nice to have you here.
Members of council. I was thinking about this today and just thinking about when I introduce myself to people and they ask what I do for a living and I tell them, they often respond with, that sounds like fun. Probably 9 times out of 10. And I'm like, absolutely, it has its fun moments for sure. But it's also very challenging, and we work very hard to provide the parks and recreation services for the city, and I think I can speak for at least the people here and most of the other people in our department that we love doing it. I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I really, truly do love serving the Wheat Ridge community. And I wanted to just take a moment to thank our Parks and Recreation Commission members as well, volunteers in our community. And I know Guy is no longer on the commission, but he served for a very long time, so I'm going to give you a shout out while you're here. But I also want to mention just the people that have joined us today. We do have 2 people that are online. Susan Anderson is our recreation manager, doing fantastic things with the recreation division, operating the outdoor pool with very limited staff. And I know somebody asked about the governor's lifeguard initiative before the meeting started, and we were working hard on that, which actually Brandon's helping with as our grant special project administrator. He's done tremendous work bringing so much grant funding to our community to allow us to do so many different things. He also oversees our accreditation process, so it's a lot of hard work. So I'd like to thank him. Again, Susan oversees a variety of things. We have summer camp going on, a lot of fantastic programs from for kids up through senior citizens in the community. I also want to mention Andrew McDonald is also online, and he is our open space and forestry supervisor. Zach Lovato is our parks, forestry, and open space manager, and together they've done some really amazing work. Just to name a few things, the tree sales this year, our tree grant program, and of course we had a pretty big storm recently, and we've collected tree branches, and hasn't entirely been a positive process, but to be able to provide that to the community is a really great service, and I really appreciate their hard work. And then I also want to mention Danielle Moore is here. She is our marketing specialist, and one of the things that you may have noticed over the last years we've been here is we now have Instagram. So that's just one component of the many things that Danielle does. Amazing work for our community, and you've probably seen a greater social media presence in general and a lot of engagement with our community. So just to name a few things that our department does, I'm really proud of the work that everyone does in parks, forestry, open space, recreation, and our facilities team. So thank you.
We have another unscheduled, not on the agenda tonight, but we do have another presentation I want to recognize. Would Allison Scheck please join me at the podium? Come on up. You don't get enough time at the podium, so we wanted to make sure you had a little extra time this year. Allie Scheck received the Assistant City Manager of the Year Award at this year's Colorado City and County Management Association in April. This award is given every year to an assistant or deputy city manager or department director who has made an outstanding contribution to local government in Colorado. Allie has had a significant impact on our organization and our community. She exhibits a high level of accountability for her responsibilities, achieving the outcomes required while demonstrating a strong work ethic. Allie has an uncanny ability to assess situations and quickly identify ways to improve efficiencies and processes. She doesn't stop there, though. She is gifted with the skills of putting strategic steps in place by which those improvements can be implemented. During her tenure with the City of Wheat Ridge, she made major impacts on several significant projects. From day one, Allie has been a champion of innovation, creative problem solving, forward thinking, and teamwork. Allie is always up for a good problem to solve, and she does it with great enthusiasm. Many of her peers seek her out as someone to go to when they are stumped on an issue. I've been one. Allie is a great ambassador for our city and has good relationships and a great reputation with key stakeholders, including council and informal leaders in the community. She demonstrates empathy and compassion in the community and puts a human face on local government. Congratulations, Allie. Stay here. We're not quite done yet, because I want to invite Allie's family is here from across the pond, if you will. I'd like to invite them to come on up here, and if we have our photographer back, we'll have a few more pictures. With Allie's mom and stepdad and her daughter and her husband are all with us, so let's snap a few pictures. I'll get one more. Back up. We have one more special presentation, and for this one, I would like to invite Deputy Police Chief Jim Lorenz to the podium. Didn't mean to leave you out of the program, but better late than never.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Chief Murtha was called away at the last minute, but that gives me the privilege to introduce our new officers that just completed the academy. They just graduated on June 10th from the Jefferson County Lakewood Regional Law Enforcement Training Academy, and they actually began their training. They actually started with the department in January, and spent all this time in the academy, and then even prior to that, July of last year was when they began the application and background process. So they've actually been with us for a while. This is kind of the first time that we'll be seeing them full time, though. They begin their field training after a couple of weeks of in-house training, and that will last all the way until about November. They'll be out in field training and then out on their own. So you can see that we and the city have a big commitment to them, and they're ready to take on the challenge. So let me ask each one of them to come up, introduce themselves, tell you something interesting about themselves, and why they chose to be a Wheat Ridge police officer.
My name is Matthew Pachaki. Originally, I'm from Littleton. Interesting fact about myself is I raise chickens and I have bees, something a little bit fun. And I chose to become a Wheat Ridge police officer because I wanted to serve a community that's close to home, somewhere that I can really make an impact in, and something that I can go above and beyond in. So far I'm just grateful to be here. Very lucky to have this opportunity.
All right, well, I'd like to thank all you officers. We welcome you to the force. I know that City Council sends their best wishes, and we appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll move the furniture one more time. Okay. We will now go to our public's right to speak. Members of the public may speak on any matter not on the agenda for a maximum of 3 minutes under this portion of our meeting. I have no one signed up to speak. If there's anyone here who is not signed up, you may do so now, and I'll check with the clerk or Allison to see if anyone online. So we don't have anyone coming forward for public comments, so we will close that portion. And to go to agenda item number 1, Councilor Hoppe, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 13-2022, an ordinance amending section 16107 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning harassment and stalking. At issue, Council Bill 13-2022 amends the local definition of criminal harassment to comply with a recent decision of the Colorado Supreme Court.
Thank you. This will be an ordinance on second reading by the council. It is a public hearing. It is not quasi-judicial. I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. Our City Attorney, Jerry Dahl, will do a staff presentation.
Mr. Dahl.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a pretty minor change to the city's harassment and stalking ordinance. All cities have a form of this kind of ordinance so as to be able to cite people for this kind of activity. There is a parallel state statute, and it's not uncommon for the city to have local ordinances that reflect the same kinds of things that are criminalized in state statutes, and that's true of Colorado. Recently, it was March, so says the staff report, the Colorado Supreme Court had occasion to look carefully at one particular aspect of Colorado's statute, which, again, as I say, the city's code mirrors, and took issue with the use of the words intended to. We're way down in the weeds now in terms of criminal statutes, but the Supreme Court felt that that impermissibly allowed a restriction on speech, and so struck down and held unconstitutional just that use of that particular phrase in the state statute. That triggered a change to our local code, or we recommend that change. We do this all the time, that as the laws evolve on the state and federal level, we respond and make certain that local laws are consistent with the holdings of relevant courts, and that's what's happening here. You'll notice that the change is actually pretty minor. You're getting the entire harassment and stalking code section in the packet, but you'll notice the changes are just what's struck through, the words harass or, and then what's added is while we were at it, we decided it was time and a good opportunity to modernize this code a little bit and add the ability to
harass or stalk using electronic means, email, etc. Because frankly, that's probably more likely an avenue for the use of this kind of force, and can similarly be charged in our municipal court. And we want to make sure the court had that jurisdiction. So it was a sort of, while we were at it, we felt we should modernize. And those are the changes we have. Answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, I will open this up for a public comment. I have no one signed up to speak on this agenda item number 2. If you didn't get to sign up but would like to now, this is the opportunity to speak. And do we have anyone on? We have no one online that's raised their hand to speak, and no one here. So we will close our public's comment time and go to questions from council. Any questions for staff on this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and a motion is in order. Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 13-2022, an ordinance amending section 16-107 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning harassment and stalking, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hulteen. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously, 8-0.
Thank you. And while I'm here on the microphone, I'm going to welcome Councilor Nosler back, who's joined us for the meeting. We will go to agenda item number 2. Councilor Ohm, would you please introduce this item and please read the at issue statement?
Thank you, Mayor. Council Bill number 10-2022, an ordinance approving a site lease agreement with T-Mobile West, LLC for use of the municipal building cellular tower. At issue, the city owns and operates a cellular tower at City Hall and has 3 lease agreements with cellular companies for use of the tower. The existing tower is no longer structurally sound and needs to be replaced to accommodate upgrades of cellular equipment on the tower. New Singular Wireless, Verizon Wireless, and T-Mobile drafted a cost-sharing agreement which will fund the demolition of the existing cellular tower and the construction of a new cellular monopole at the same location. Approval of this ordinance will allow the city to finalize a site lease agreement with T-Mobile West, LLC.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on second reading. It is a public hearing. It is not quasi-judicial. I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this? I know
We do. We'll have a brief presentation on this. I just want to, first of all, thank Karen O'Donnell. She's been taking on the facilities role here, along with all of our Parks and Rec duties. And this one was a doozy. Working with 3 different cellular carriers was quite difficult. So thank her for getting it to this point. But I just want to allow her to give a little bit of a update or a presentation on the process to get here.
Director O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Okay, so the existing cell tower, which is located on the south side of the building, is in need of replacement, as stated. The city was approached by the 3 cellular carriers, which is New Singular, which is also, they're known as AT&T now, Verizon, and T-Mobile. And they would like to demolish the existing tower and build a new monopole tower. During the early negotiations, they were hoping that the city would contribute to the cost of the demolition and construction, but we felt that it was something that they should be responsible for. So they developed a cost-sharing agreement amongst the 3 of them to fund the demolition and construction costs. During the demolition and construction phases, each carrier will have a cell on wheels located in the parking lot. It's just a temporary structure, and that's to prevent service interruption. And you actually approved those temporary site agreements at the last regular business meeting. As we've worked through, or we're working through the plan review process with the Community Development Department, we've asked that while vehicles will not be permitted to go around the building during the time of the demolition and construction, which is approximately 3 months, but we don't actually have a schedule just yet, and we will communicate that as soon as we do. But we've asked for a lane for emergency vehicle access, because that's, of course, important for particularly fire to be able to get through. And they have agreed to that. So once the new monopole project is complete, the new leases will go into effect. The city will receive $3,500 in rent from each of the carriers per month. And these leases will be in place for 15 years with the opportunity to renew in 5-year increments. So previously, the carriers were all on different lease agreements with different timelines, and it was a bear. So we are excited to have them all on the same schedule to make that easier for us moving forward as well. So until the pool is complete, the carriers will continue to utilize their existing lease documents. T-Mobile is the only one who's expired in the fall, and we negotiated an agreement to continue with their lease until the pool is completed. And then the final thing that I want to say, I know Mr. Goff mentioned that this was quite an undertaking. I just want to extend my gratitude to Mr. Dahl, Ms. Scheck, and Steve Cabellis with the West Metro Fire District for their time and assistance with this process every step of the way, because it was truly a team effort.
Okay, thank you. Before we get into any questions from council, we'll invite the public to speak on this. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if you haven't signed up and would like to speak, you may do so now or online, and we don't have anyone online to speak, so I'm going to close the public portion of our agenda item and go to questions from council. Are there any questions from council? And I'll remark that we have two more items. Items 3 and 4, I believe, are similar on this. We have three carriers, and we've got a separate item for each one, so we will not go through all of this. The director's download on this anymore. So anyway, if there are no questions, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Mr. Ohm, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 10, 2022, an ordinance approving a site lease agreement with T-Mobile West LLC for use of the municipal cell tower, and that it take effect upon adoption and signature by the mayor as permitted by section 5.11 of the charter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Stites. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilor Hulteen.
I just want to make a comment that I appreciate the city's approach to this, and congratulations on negotiating the city out of any obligation on the demo for that. Good work, city, and hopefully the construction goes quickly, because I know it's disruptive in the parking lot. So.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. That will bring us to agenda item number 3. Councilor Hutchinson, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 11-2022, an ordinance approving a site lease agreement with Verizon Wireless for use of the municipal building cellular tower.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on second reading. It is a public hearing. It is not quasi-judicial. I'm going to open the public hearing. We do not have a staff presentation on this item, as it is substantially the same as the last item. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this? And I don't have anyone signed up, but I want to make sure that I invite anyone to speak, either online. We don't have anybody stepping forward, so we'll skip that. Are there any questions from council? And I don't believe there are, so we will close the public hearing. And may I have a motion, Councilor Hutchinson?
I move to approve Council Bill number 11-2022, an ordinance approving a site lease agreement with Verizon Wireless for use of the municipal cell tower, and that it take effect upon adoption and signature by the mayor as permitted by section 5.11 of the charter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Stites. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council? Thank you so much. This will bring us up to agenda item number 4. Councilor Stites, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 12-2022, an ordinance approving a site lease agreement with the new Singular Wireless PCS LLC for use of the municipal building cell tower.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on second reading. It is a public hearing. It is not quasi-judicial. I'm going to open the public hearing. We do not have a staff presentation on this item, as it was substantially similar to the last one. I will ask if there is any public comment for this item. I have no one signed up to speak, but either online or in person you may speak, and I don't have anyone seeing that, so we will close our public portion. Are there any questions from council? And seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Councilor Stites, a motion is in order.
I move to approve Council Bill number 12-2022, an ordinance approving a lease with New Singular PCS LLC for use of the municipal cell tower, and that it take effect upon adoption and signature by the mayor as permitted by Section 5.11 of the Charter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hoppe. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. That will bring us to agenda item number 5. Councilor Dozeman, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 15, 2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning the regulation of accessory dwelling units and making conforming amendments therewith. At issue, accessory dwelling units, ADUs, are smaller independent residential dwelling units located on the same property as a single-unit home and can be attached or detached from the main house. ADUs have been identified as one component of the missing middle, which helps increase housing options in Wheat Ridge. This ordinance proposes to legalize ADUs as an accessory use to single-unit homes while providing flexibility for homeowners in terms of design, location, and development standards. This ordinance is a response to specific policy direction from City Council based on staff presentations, public feedback, and lessons learned from peer communities. In addition to providing a regulatory pathway forward for new ADUs, the ordinance also creates a pathway in certain circumstances for existing ADUs to be legalized.
Thank you very much. This is an ordinance on first reading. Ordinances on first reading set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. At that public hearing, and up until then, we will take comment on this item, so we're not taking any comment on theirs tonight. So, Ms. Dozeman, may I have a motion on this item?
Yes, sir. I move to approve Council Bill number 15, 2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning the regulation of accessory dwelling units and making conforming amendments therewith. On first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers if allowed to meet in person on that date per COVID-19 restrictions, and that it take effect August 1st, 2022.
We have a second by Councilor Ohm. Will the clerk please poll the council?
Stone, would you care to vote? Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will move to agenda item number 6. Mayor Pro Tem Holteen, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 14, 2022, an ordinance amending Section 1752 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to address the use of assisted mobility devices in park and recreation areas. At issue, this ordinance amends Section 1752 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to permit the use of assisted mobility devices on certain city recreation trails by persons with disabilities.
Thank you very much. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. Mayor Pro Tem Holteen, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to read the motion. I'd like to note that what I'm reading is a correction. What's currently published indicates the incorrect date of June 27th, so I will read into record the correct date of July 11th, 2022. I move to approve Council Bill number 14, 2022, an ordinance amending Section 1752 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to address the use of assisted mobility devices in park and recreation areas. On first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers if allowed to meet in person on that date per COVID-19 restrictions, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Stites. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will now go to agenda item number 7. Councilor Weaver, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is resolution number 30-2022, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2022 general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $100,000 Jefferson Center's Community Prevention and Engagement Program. The City Council provided consensus to contribute a portion of the city's America Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funding to support nonprofit organizations whose demand for services has increased due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Consensus was received to provide $400,000 over a 4-year period to the Jefferson Center for its Community Prevention and Engagement Program, which focuses on increasing access to mental health care and reducing stigma.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
Just real briefly to add to Councilmember Weaver, we discussed this with City Council on the April 4th study session and did receive consensus to move forward with funding the Jefferson Center for Mental Health, their community prevention and engagement program. We did include the scope of work in your packet from Jefferson Center. They were very excited. This was a program that was originally funded by FEMA. That funding did run out, and so the good news was they had staffing on board still, so they didn't have to go out and find staffing like a lot of us are doing for a lot of positions. So this program is up and running already, and they were thrilled with the city's contribution. This will really help, again, those community members that were most directly impacted by COVID and with mental health and suicide awareness, prevention training, stress, parenting, self-care, and dealing with anxiety. So a lot of those things. So that's it. And this, as we said, this money comes from the city's allocation of ARPA dollars. So there's no direct impact on the city's reserves for this expense.
Thank you very much. Before I go to questions from council, I'd like to open this to comments from the public. I have no one signed up to speak on this item, but if you would like to speak, you may do so now. And I'll check to see if no one's online or anyone online wants to speak, and there is no one, so we'll close that portion. I'll go for questions from council. Seeing none, I will ask Councilor Weaver for a motion on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 30-2022, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2022 general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $100,000 for the Jefferson Center's Community Prevention and Engagement Program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hoppe. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. That completes our regular agenda items on our agenda tonight. We will next go to City Manager's Matters. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items, updates for you and the public. I'm not sure if this ever was on your calendar, but we, at least internally, we originally had tomorrow scheduled for a ribbon cutting for our outdoor fitness court. We've ran into some issues with a contractor who left us, I believe. So the project's not done yet. So we're working on finding another contractor. I think we have somebody, and we'll let you know when that is rescheduled. You've also all received an email from Karen O'Donnell back on June 23rd with a link to sign up for an interview for the Open Space Management Plan process. So just a reminder, if you haven't done that, please do that. We're excited to get a new plan in place. And we do apologize about the microphones. There's something going on tonight. They're going in and out, so we'll hopefully get those fixed for next week. You may have also heard, and Karen brought it up earlier, but Governor Polis announced a new grant program last week to help with retention, recruitment, training, and overtime wages, and/or retention bonuses to help keep our pools open across Colorado. You know, it's been a countrywide issue. I think I heard a third of the pools across the country are closed this summer, unfortunately. We did apply for the grant. We should hear back, I think, by next week, July 7th, or I think, maybe? Yeah, July 7th, I think, is when we'll hear. Unfortunately, it's kind of late. It's middle of the summer already, so hopefully it still could have some impact. We're eligible for up to $25,000 for the season, so we're hoping to receive some of that money. And you know, the hard part still is finding individuals that will apply for the jobs, even with those incentives. So there's no guarantees we're going to be able to fill all of our lifeguard positions, but we will definitely try. One last thing, happy to announce that the city's request to Congressman Perlmutter for $4 million for our Wadsworth project, it's made the first cut in the House Appropriations Subcommittee draft fiscal year 23 bill. This will, it still has to be approved by the full House. We're hoping by August we'll know for that, but then also the senators. We did ask also request from Senators Bennett and Perlmutter. The same request. They've included it on their project list, so we're waiting for the Senate to release their appropriation bill. So more to come. We'll keep you updated on that. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Goff. We'll go to City Attorney's Matters. Mr. Dahl.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go to Elected Officials Matters. I'll start with our City Clerk, Mr. Clerk Kirkpatrick. Thank you very much, and we hope that everyone is exercising their franchise. We will go to our counselors. Start with Councilor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to say on a happy note, congratulations, Colorado Avalanche.
All right.
And Colorado.
You're here.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Nosler Beck.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, go Avs. And also, just a shout out to all those lifeguards who are currently out there doing the thing right now. It's really crazy, and it's just been amazing to be at the pools this summer, and everybody's doing such an awesome job. Karen, your entire team is just the best. Making I just think some really special memories for everybody in the community. And that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week was a very Wheat-Ridgey weekend. Ms. Weaver and I had our District 3 meeting at the New Clear Creek Crossing. It was beautiful. The apartments there are fantastic, and the rooms there. We had about, I think, 30-some people there, almost all brand new people that haven't been to our district meeting before, so that was amazing. Greg Moss from Lutheran came and did a presentation about the new hospital, and then we had Christine from the developer came and did a fantastic presentation. Mr. Goff and I had a chance to walk a bunch of people out and show them what the site's going to look like. So we're really excited about that. Saturday night was Ridge Fest last weekend. It was a great event. Local Works did a fantastic job. And then Sunday, I have to give a shout out to Parks and Rec. And Allie was there, and Mr. Mayor was there. And Five Ridges Farm for the goat parade. We had a lot of fun walking the goats from Five Ridges down to Lewis Meadows Park. And I can tell you all my neighbors and everybody there are really excited to have the goats back in the community. So thank you, Five Ridges Farm and Ms. Weaver, for that. We really enjoy it. And I believe that's it. Go Avs.
Okay, thank you. A lot of things going on in our community. Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank Parks and Rec. You are all doing a wonderful job. This proclamation was well deserved, and we appreciate the work that you are doing in the community. And I noticed that those limbs that were dropped off are being chipped up and disposed of. So thank you for that as well. And also, the Carnation Festival is coming up. We have royalty open until July 2nd. So if you know a member of the community that you would like to nominate for Grand Marshal, Count, or Countess, we recognize those members in the community every year. So that is closing July 2nd. You can go to the website. We're still accepting vendors and parade registrants as well. And then we don't have a meeting next week because it is Independence Day. So I wanted to wish everybody a happy Independence Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to revoice some of the thank yous to the community for coming out to our District 3 meeting, as well as just all the support from the Goat Parade. Corey mentioned, of course, Park and Rec. I also wanted to mention the police department. We always get such a nice, safe way down 32nd to Lewis Meadows Park. So thank you very much for that. And thanks for everybody who came out to help with the seasonal summer workers that help out with Park and Rec. And get ready, right? Carnation Festival's coming. I'm already getting.
It's going to be big.
It's a countdown.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I did attend Bridge Fest too, and talked to a couple people in the makerspace. There was some interesting things that people were making. One of them was some furniture, some very high quality furniture that I saw. And I was really kind of excited about that. That really did. And just to remind everybody, I love the fireworks as much as everybody, but I just tell our citizens to please do not have the fireworks lighting in our neighborhoods. I know that's always a concern of our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, on Saturday, it was a fun time on the green, and if anybody had an opportunity to try the barbecue from the barbecue truck there, that is going to be the new restaurant in what was the White Coast Pizza building. So, got a little preview, and it was, I consider myself a barbecue snob, and I consider that a very good barbecue.
Very good.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Oh my gosh, I have a long list. I'm sorry, you guys, but it's all good. It's all good. So just a couple of logistics things. There are a couple of important meetings this week. I believe we got an email today that there's a Makerspace open house tomorrow, and I would encourage everybody to go check that out and learn more about that exciting addition to our community. And then on the 6th of July, which is a week from Wednesday, there is a 2-hour joint open house for both our affordable housing plan as well as the 44th area subplan. And so everyone in this community should go and give their input on the affordable housing. And then if you are a constituent within the 44th Avenue sub-area plan, please participate in that as well. And I'm also very proud to say my son is lifeguarding this summer. So we are partially one family contributing to that issue. And then just again on the fireworks, they're not legal and they're problematic. So please don't do it. And then I just want to wax, just incredibly proud of our city. Just tonight, the opening parade of recognizing our Parks and Rec, which are the reason I moved to this city is because I was using the Parks and Rec in a city I didn't live in, and it made me want to live here. And so it's my gateway drug to the city. And now that I serve on council, and especially during COVID, I just have a profound appreciation for how nimble and creative and adaptive our Parks and Recreation department was through that. And then we continue to have things like gigantic storms, and then now you're doing facilities. So thank you, Karen specifically, but also all of your staff for doing such a good job with our city. I couldn't be more proud of our recruits. We were at the CML conference this last week, and City Manager Patrick Goff and I had a chance to talk to a couple of police officers, and we're doing something right here because other communities are not as successful getting new recruits as we are. So I think we heard it from the voices tonight why they're choosing Wheat Ridge, and I think we should be really, really proud that that's who we are as a city. And then, of course, Allie, just you are a gem in our city, in our staff, in our community, and in my life. So you are well-deserved of every word that was spoken in your honor tonight. And so thank you for choosing Wheat Ridge. We're really lucky. And then at CML, Wheat Ridge was everywhere. We were presenting people who started here, who've gone on to other great things. We're presenting, like, we are this incredibly small and incredibly mighty. Yeah, Chief Lorenz presented. I mean, we were all over the place, and we're just this, adorable little town of 32,000 people, but we shine really brightly across the state. So I'm just really, really, really proud of who we have been, who we are today, and who we're going to be tomorrow as a city. So good work, Wheat Ridge. Way to go.
Thank you. Councillor Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a lot to say. I forgot one thing. I want to recognize Guy Namiash had Art on the Farm this past weekend in District 3 as well. So I had a chance to stop by. He has artists out there doing things live in front of people, kids, everything. So he's got another one coming up, I think, July 30th. So take a look at that. But amazing things going on in District 3 and in Wheat Ridge. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, as you can see, you need a town crier to cry out all the great things that are happening in Wheat Ridge. So I want to really give my thanks and encouragement to the citizens that make this such a great place to live. I want to thank and congratulate Allie. Great job on this award. You do a great job for our community. I want to welcome again our new police recruits. We're glad that you joined us. We think that you'll find this to be a great place to live, work, and play, and we appreciate and welcome you to the force. I was at CML this week, and Deputy Chief Lorenz had a great presentation. Judge Randall had another presentation. There was a lot of good camaraderie, and we certainly made a great showing at that event. This Saturday at 9 o'clock is going to be Coffee with the Mayor at Vinola's Italian Restaurant and Deli, and I hope you'll stop by and join me for a cup of coffee and conversation at 9 o'clock this Saturday morning. We are not here next week. We will, because it is Independence Day, as Councilor Dozman reminded us. And so I want to wish everybody a very happy Independence Day. I hope you'll take a moment to reflect on what independence and freedom are in our society. Grab those civic responsibilities that we talk about, and grab those to heart, and help make our society the best that we can do. So if there's no more business to come before us, we are going to start our study session right after this meeting. So if there's no more business, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all. I wasn't going to take a break unless anybody wants to take a break. We haven't been at it for an hour yet. So I don't know. Our public's going to wonder what we do here. You know, it's all in the package. So. Milky Way to give me a little energy. No. I'm sure eating it now.
Yeah, those are good. I had one of those.
We didn't. Okay. I would like to call to order the special study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for June 27th, 2022. We have two items on our study session tonight. Item number 1 is paid family and medical leave program, and item number 2 is removal of race-based real estate covenants. We will start our meeting, as we often do, with a comment from the public on any agenda items. So this is only on those 2 agenda items. I have no one signed up to speak on these, but if you were here and would like to speak on this, you may do so now or online. And I don't see anyone online, so we will pass our public's comment on agenda items and go to agenda item number 1, paid family and medical leave program. Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this item?
We do. I will turn it over to Allie Sheck, and we do have some great members from our HR team here to help. And Allie?
Director Sheck.
Mr. Goff, good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, apologies for the mics. We've got audio techs coming at 10 a.m. tomorrow from our vendor to sort this out. Don't know what's happening. Gremlins in the system. Thank you for having us here this evening for a special study session. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Michael Klassen, who is our HR manager. Michael, you've been here almost 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. We stole him away from Boulder. He's amazing. And if you recall, not too long ago, you approved a new FTE in HR. Well, this would be her. This is Melissa Long, who came out of Parks and Recreation, which we know yours is your favorite. So you are going to absolutely love Melissa. She is an attorney who has this incredible background that she is now bringing to us here in Wheat Ridge. So tonight, the one thing I wanted to mention, you're going to hear about Colorado's paid family leave. We do have a recommendation for you tonight, and we'll be asking for you to give us direction at the end of this presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and Michael.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Melissa Long. I'm a new Human Resources business partner here with the City of Wheat Ridge. I've been studying this issue of the Colorado Paid Family and Medical Leave Act for about the last 6 months or so. So tonight we'll briefly update you on that program. We'll provide you with some recommendations and then ask for guidance. The Colorado Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Act was approved by voters in the November 2020 election. It mandates that Colorado employers provide their employees with up to 12 weeks of paid leave for the following reasons: to care for a new child, to care for a family member with a serious health condition, for the employee's own serious health condition, for any qualifying military leave, and for any need for a safe leave, which is related to domestic violence issues. This particular program is funded by premiums that are assessed against an employee's wages, and it is split 50-50 between both the employer and the employee. For the years 2023 and 2024, those premiums are set at 0.9% of an employee's wages. That rate is not set for 2025. It is likely to change, but it is statutorily capped at 1.2%. Those premium deductions will begin in January of 2023, but the leave cannot be taken until January of 2024. The wage replacement benefit does vary by salary, and it is anywhere between 37 and 90%. In 2024, that benefit will be capped at $1,100 per week. We've inserted a chart here to sort of illustrate how this program may look at different salary points. So I'll go through that just very quickly with you. For instance, somebody making $28,000 a year in annual salary who brings home around $552 a week would get 90% of their salary under this program. And they would also pay the lowest in premium at just over $128 annually. Conversely, someone who's making $140,000 a year with a weekly salary of $2,800 would only get 39% replaced. And yet they'll pay some of the higher amounts in premium. As you can see there, it'll be just over $630 for their portion. All Colorado employers are required to participate in this program with a few exceptions, and local government is one of those exceptions. They can choose to opt out of the program. The Colorado Municipal League has been tracking municipalities all over the state for about the last 6 months to see which municipalities may be thinking of either participating in the program or opting out. And as of right now, about 44 municipalities have responded to that request by CML, and about 43 are either opting out or they're leaning towards opting out at this time. Even if a local government opts out, its employees can actually still participate in this program on their own. They would just simply remit their portion of their premium to the division directly. If a local government employer does not opt out of the program, they are committed to staying in it for the next 3 years. If they opt out, they can choose to participate in any subsequent year. They would just do it at the beginning of their annual fiscal cycle. And participating employers are fully responsible for the administrative and legal costs of compliance with this program. We estimate that participating in this program will cost the city about $90,000 in employer premiums annually based on our 2021 audited payroll numbers. We also estimate that we will need an additional 0.25 and possibly up to 0.5 additional FTE to administer the program and ensure all the premiums and the leaves are correctly managed. We believe that one of the reasons why local governments can opt out of this program is because oftentimes local governments provide more comprehensive leave benefits to their employees than what you might find in the private sector. Wheat Ridge currently offers the following leaves for their employees: paid time off, extended sick leave, and short-term disability insurance that will temporarily replace wages in the event of a serious health emergency. The paid time off accrual does depend on longevity with the city, and it ranges anywhere from 6.25 hours per paycheck for employees with less than 5 years of service with the city to 9.25 hours per paycheck for employees with more than 16 years of service. Employees do accrue 1.54 hours of extended sick leave per paycheck with a maximum of 480 hours, which is 12 weeks. And we also provide a donated leave bank for those employees who have exhausted their own current leave benefit. We believe that there are some advantages to participating in a paid leave program. We believe that employee access to paid leave can help the city remain competitive as an employer, and it may increase the retention of our employees. We also believe that allowing employees to participate in the state program on their own if their local government opts out is a really great advantage. However, we do believe there are quite a few disadvantages to this particular state leave program. As you saw earlier with our chart, the benefit amount is unequal. All employees will be forced to pay for this benefit even if they don't use it. It means that more money is taken out of the paychecks of our employees during a very challenging economic time. The premium amounts after 2024 are unknown at this time. There are increased payroll costs and increased employer liability. And as we mentioned earlier, this is a full-time commitment. If we opt in now, we are committed to the program through 2026. We believe that we have 3 options in front of us right now. The first option is that we can participate in the family program. Because every employer is presumed to be participating in the program unless they notify the division otherwise, there would be no action required by council at this time. Costs and staffing needs would be addressed in our 2023 budget, and we would begin developing the processes for premium withholdings from our employee paychecks. Our second option is to decline participation in family. We would vote to opt out of participation. We would continue to evaluate our current leave policy for sufficiency and continuous improvement. Our city employees would still be able to participate in family on their own. And that opt-out decision is not a permanent decision. It's only good for 8 years, and at that time it would need to be revisited. Our third option is to decline participation in the family program, but implement a similar paid medical leave program. This program would be administered internally and would not come with any of the mandatory payroll deductions. Our recommendation to you tonight is that we decline participation in the family program at this time, but implement a city-specific paid family and medical leave program. The way we envision this working is that all employees would be eligible after working for the city for 6 months. They would be eligible for the benefit for the same reasons as outlined in family. The employees would use their paid time off for the first 2 weeks of leave, and then they would be eligible for 100% wage replacement for the remaining 10 weeks. And again, that's 100% wage replacement, which is different from the family program, which is at best 90%. We believe this plan would allow the city to remain a competitive employer by granting paid medical and family leave, but without the cost and the administrative burden of joining the state's program. Our next steps are that if you do decide to opt out, a resolution would be brought forward at the next regular business meeting, or at a future regular business meeting, I should say. Our employees would be notified of that meeting and that upcoming vote, and they would be provided the opportunity to provide testimony and commentary. And we would provide education to all of our employees about the program and our proposed course of action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ready for questions? Okay, questions, council. We'll start with Councilor Nasserbeck.
Thanks, and thanks so much for the presentation. Can you speak to a little bit more about what the administrative costs would be for running this option that you all are recommending? And I'm just going to preface this by sharing that one of the reasons I worked on helping pass this family paid family leave program, and one of the purposes of the program being created at the state level was to help alleviate some of the burdensome parts of administering this at the local level or all across the board. And so I'm just wondering, can we administer this program that you're proposing at still cost savings?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think that this would be really at no cost because it would be a matter of following our policies. Currently, if I understood your question, what the cost would be to administer a program of our own, is that correct? Yeah, so in order to do that, we would actually be streamlining and simplifying several of our leaves that we have and consolidating them into fewer leaves into this program that we're outlining very broadly right now. So it would really be a matter of socializing it after having the policies really nailed down and then following those practices. So we don't anticipate any increase in workload or cost, just a different process and practice for the city.
Mr. Klassen, I'll just add, Councilor Nasserbeck, that we budget at full staffing for the city. So the cost of additional, there is no additional cost for paid family leave in the internal scenario.
And so then also in comparison to the state plan, the family, right, is what we're calling versus what's being proposed here. Is there with the family plan something where you have to use that accrued PTO, or is the PTO, that first 2 weeks, is that just for what we have with our program? What I'm asking is it tit for tat in those types of trading out? Do people have to earn their time before they can use the time?
Not in the family program. However, I think a lot of employees would choose to add the difference, right? Because the state's program, the family program, is not 100% wage replacement. So while they don't need to use accrued leave first, I think, right, majority of employees would choose to top up that differential to 100% wage replacement with accrued time off. Does that make sense? So an employee that gets potentially 50% wage replacement because of their salary would likely choose to use accrued paid time off in order to top up to 100% wages.
Okay.
Which you can do in family. Yeah. Does that make sense, what she just said? You can use, if we were in the family program, if you're at a certain salary range, you're only going to get 50% replacement for those 12 weeks, but you can use your accrued PTO at your employer to cover the rest of the 50%. So under our proposed plan, it would be 100% replacement, except for the first 2 weeks you have to use accrued time.
And honestly, I'll just say that we've been going back and forth on that. You know, we've listed, in fact, I think there's even at this table some differing opinions about how much an employee should be asked to use paid time off before they get paid family leave. And so that's not baked, and frankly, you all could give us direction on that. Part of the reason for at least starting at that point is that one of our biggest financial liabilities is actually paid time off, which is a property right and is paid out to employees when they leave the city. So, you know, to some degree, we're offering potentially 12 weeks of fully paid job protection in a year, every year. Is there an incentive for us to say, well, let's reduce that liability a little bit by asking employees to take at least a small portion of it, utilizing their paid time off?
I really appreciate that explanation, and that makes a lot of sense. And I'm just going to share my personal experience not working at a local government, but at a state agency with PTO that had the same type of, you know, kind of earned it as you went. And I would just be in favor of not having the PTO be attached to the paid family leave piece, just because in my experience, I burned through my PTO pretty quick after my second child, and there were just some things that I needed to take care of as a result of, you know, having a kid, and it was an extra 3 weeks, and I ended up having to basically go back to my other folks that I worked with, other employees, and ask them for their time, and it put me in a really uncomfortable situation, and I don't want anybody else to have to go through that, to get more PTO. And so that's my personal experience that I'm comfortable with sharing, but I just throw that out as the way one of these things kind of works out.
In our program, with the donated leave program, we don't require the employee to go seek the PTO from other employees. Employees donate to HR. There's a bank, so it's somewhat of a private transaction. You know, HR is always obviously involved.
Thank you, Councilor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In our PTO program, is that something where like you use it or lose it, or does it accrue like year over year?
Oh, with the caps. Yeah, thanks for the question. So right now, what we have for PTO, is that what? Yes. So we have accruals, and people can accrue anywhere from 20 to 30 days per year, and that's used for vacation or for sick leave. That's capped out and rolls over year to year at about, it depends on how long you've been here, but 210 to 300 hours a year is what it rolls over to be. So it's not a use it or lose it situation. People can be carrying over anywhere from 200 to 300 hours each year in perpetuity if they hold on to that time.
So if, so in this scenario, if we decide to, first I'd like to say that being paid 100% rather than potentially 50% is, I feel is a better option, right? So we're calling it opt out. I feel like it's really, we're opting for something better. And I understand it's not in concrete, we still have some time to tweak it, but let me just ask you on the PTO piece. So the first 2 weeks of PTO, that's 80 hours. So if someone's built up 300 hours, they only use the 80, and then they still have those remaining PTO hours, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And then, and my other question is on the one of the reasons to be able to use, it was for safety situations, and it said domestic violence. It does childhood violence or elderly abuse or child abuse, do those also fall under that kind of domestic violence? So like if you need to leave for a safety situation because you have to get your child or your elderly parent that's living with you out of a situation, does it fall under that domestic violence piece?
Yeah, no, so that we would love to hear some guidance from you on that. So as far as people who are covered and what situations are covered, currently we follow FMLA, and with our extended sick leave, our policy states that the conditions for using that mirror the FMLA policy. So if we wanted to be more generous in defining who were family members, relatives, whatever that situation was, we can always be more generous. So that's again, something we'd love some guidance on. We're starting off with kind of this core structure of what's typical for the coverage.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the states, and trying to mirror the state's family program as best we can, which is clearly trying to be modeled after FMLA for ease of administration, I would think.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is, what happens if an employee doesn't have 2 weeks worth of accrued paid time off?
Yeah, if someone doesn't have time or leaves and they need to be away from work, that happens currently all the time without this law or without without opting in or out. We have a shared leave. It's commonly called a donated leave pool. We currently have several hundred hours on the books that were donated, and people can request that. And we have some guidelines around how many hours they're used. There's a maximum per year. I believe it's 80 hours off the top of my head, and it can only be done once per calendar year. But if the situation warranted it, that person would be donated and given some or all of that leave. So in extenuating circumstances, that's what that bank is for.
Great, thank you. To Councilor Nosler-Beck's point, using all of your accrued paid time off, especially if it's, because you're having a baby, babies get sick the first year. I mean, having been the parent of a small child and now as a single mom, if I had to use all of my paid time off for that, and to not have the flexibility later to be able to be responsive to that baby's needs, would be really stressful and constraining. So I would like to propose we look at an option that uses maybe 50% of available paid time, like accrued paid time off at the beginning of that. And then maybe there's some creative Alley HR team solution to, if you go past 8 weeks, that there's some sort of calculation on being able to either like take a lower percentage of your full pay or opt in to use the remaining paid time out, but I think paid time off, sorry. I've worked as an independent contractor for way too long. I'm like, what is this paid time off you're talking about? But I like that option that allows for the flexibility to only use 50% at the beginning, and then to give the person the option, if it's extended, that they can either dip into that or they can opt in for a lower percentage of their pay.
I appreciate that, Councilor Holteen. In fact, this is something that Mrs. Long and I were talking about, that because a lot of times, and Michael, you'd know this more than I, employees don't necessarily use 12 weeks, right? So what I like about that idea is that we're not assuming, I think it's easy on paper to assume that employees will use 12 weeks. And so what's 2? What's 2 weeks compared to 12 weeks, right? 10 weeks paid, 2 weeks PTO. And I think what you're suggesting is maybe it's a little more scalable than that, so that perhaps an employee that needs 4 weeks off doesn't use half of it for PTO at the beginning. So I think with this kind of direction, and obviously that depends on the consensus you all reach tonight, we can certainly workshop that a little bit more. I think our recommendation would be that we work this through the budget process a little bit in turning this into a policy for 2023. So you're giving us some great food for thought.
Thank you. Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess for me, when you're capped at 300 hours and you spend 80 of that for for part of our family act, whatever, have a name, Wheat Ridge Family Act. You still have 5.5 weeks of paid time off available after 12 weeks of being paid 100%. So while you're workshopping that problem, I think something should be kept in mind where if somebody has 300 hours of paid time off, really losing 80 hours is not going to be very detrimental to them if they take even the full 12 weeks and then they have another 5.5 weeks later. So I'm just trying to keep that in mind also.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hoppy. And we don't have a way to just flash this up there easily, but sorry, Michael, I'm just going to grab that for a quick second. So I think, it's really through 5 years of tenure, the maximum you can accrue is, I think, 210 hours of PTO. Yeah. So I've been here 3.5, so the maximum I can accrue is 210. So just to put it in perspective, the maximum to accrue and keep 300 hours, you have to have been here for 16 or more years. Just to clarify that point just a little bit. But certainly, depending on the consensus you reach, we can, again, work this and come up with some different options. And of course, look to our competitors, if you like, for competitor employees, because it's important that we get this right.
Councillor Hobby.
Thank you. Just quick follow-up. I appreciate that. 210 hours is still more than 5 weeks. So just keeping that in mind. I think that I have faith that you guys will come up with a really great program with like the discussions that you're hearing from the dais, and I support us to opt out, and I would just really like to see the
Thank you, Councillor Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sort of curious if you guys have any, this can be a wild off-the-hip answer, if you're comfortable with it, but like on average, how much carryover paid time off do people usually carry with them into a following year? And I'm just sitting here because I'm like, I take vacations. And so, yeah, I'm just wondering if accrual is like.
That's a great question. I don't know, and I can find out. Anecdotally, most people use their PTO, and there's a small proportion of people who don't use it. They hold on to it and they fly close to the sun, as close to the cap as they can. But I'd really need to look at that average. I wouldn't want to speculate. I can find that pretty easily tomorrow. I mean, that's a pretty easy number to find. I just don't have it at my hands. I'm sorry.
And you don't need to get it to me. I just think as we're taking a look at this, I just don't want to be, like putting a lot of weight on the assumption that people are banking hours when in fact they're not. So I, whatever, like Ms. Hoppy said, you guys are going to come back with something great based on this discussion tonight. And but if we could be, taking a look at what do those accruals look like, how much paid time off are people typically sitting on, because I just don't want to, I'm thinking about the people who are like me, who I'm at the other end of flying. I'm flying as close to the earth as I can, and I am like figuring out how to take every one of my vacation days every year because I like vacation. So I just want to make sure that we're crafting a policy and a plan that actually works for the majority of how our employees take their vacation.
Thank you. Councillor Nosler-Beck.
Do we know how employees feel about it? I'm asking that question just because this was a ballot initiative and voters voted for paid family leave. And so do we have an idea of how employees feel about paid family leave versus PTO? And also with that, like, to me, this seems like a real recruitment tool and retention tool for staff. Sometimes where maybe we can meet them where they're at on a salary, but having some real flexibility in this program.
You saying the state program, family program?
The state
It's a
program.
recruitment
I'm
tool.
asking like where we are, what we've heard from our employees and what they would like, and then I was just referencing a ballot measure.
Sure, yeah, we haven't had that comprehensive discussion with staff, but if council gives us direction tonight, we will. We believe what we're proposing is a better recruitment tool than the family program. Again, you're going to get 100% replacement, and you're barely going to get 50% replacement, and you're paying for premiums. What we're proposing, you don't have to pay any premiums. It's not going to cost the city anything. Family program, state family program, we believe is lesser than what we're providing, recommending.
And Mr. Goff, just to add to that, and Ms. Long, you brought this up, that the fiscal note attached to the bill estimates that only about 3% of employees will use it. It's actually not a well-utilized leave for a situation where everyone is contributing from their paycheck. And while I absolutely understand why this is so important, I can also see why local governments were given that ability to opt out for the reason that we have the ability to provide such rich leaves without asking employees to withhold from their paychecks.
Yeah, and I get all of that, and so appreciate it. I guess what I'm getting at too is if we're going to move forward with family leave, whatever that looks like, that we stop saying that we're opting out of family leave, that we like message it so that this can be something that's really something, like I was saying before, just for retention and recruitment, and that we're paying close attention to that.
Thank you. Councilor Stites.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Ms. Hoppy. I think that opting out of the state version of this and the Wheat Ridge version of this makes a lot more sense fiscally for the employees and for the city. I would like to see what you guys come back with as far as maybe using some sort of a scalable tool for how long including some of the grant opportunities we're using. But this looks like a much better deal for the I guess my one question is, if we do some sort of a scalable thing, I know part of the reason we wouldn't opt into the state version is how much on the back end, as far as human resources and stuff like that, do you think we would have to add more as far as human resources, personnel, and money if we start scaling things like that?
No, thanks for the question. I don't think so. We're fortunate to have IMA, which is our benefits broker and business partner, and they really can help us dial that in as far as whether it's policy or legal compliance, that sort of thing. But I think from a policy perspective, we have the right people in the right seats in our organization. I think the reason we were looking at a little more staff if we opted in is the compliance and liability, and it's not in our wheelhouse. It's not something we've developed, so it would just be an add-on of work. So yeah, thanks. Yeah.
And especially as somebody who hates paying for stuff that I don't use,
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, beyond the consensus to opt out of the state program, do you need any other specific consensus tonight, or is the general conversation good enough direction? Okay.
I think we heard quite a few comments, which we'll bring back to you in a proposed paid family leave program at the city.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to ask for a sorry.
Councilor Gozman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just had a couple questions as far as with the bucket of donated PTO. Is that accrued quite a lot by now, or like how often do people donate their PTO?
Oh, you know what? That's a great question. So it hasn't happened since I've been here in 4 years. So I don't know if, Patrick, if you can remember the last time, I think it was PD for the one employee who needed a sizable donation. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it must not happen often because we can't remember. I've been here 20 years, and I remember on a couple occasions where we put a call out to all employees to our donated bank leave is low, and we need some donations. If you have some, if you can donate. I've only really remember 2 or 3 times that's happened.
So it's generally on an as-needed basis, not just that's
Yes.
compiled.
Totally. Yep.
Okay, and then, so as somebody that works for an employer that we have to accrue our paid time off, I'm not given paid vacations or paid sick leave. I have to dip into my PTO. So, you know, I'm well aware of like the donation and needing, you know, people to give their time in case a colleague may need it. But I really appreciate the staff for being savvy in this situation. You know, I was in opposition to this as a whole, and you know, I'm always frustrated when government agencies are allowed to opt out of various laws that are imposed on the general public, and the fact that this allows for employers also to opt out if they take the initiative to create a better plan, or if they have fewer employees, you know, is a good cutout in my mind. So I just really appreciate staff being considerate of our employees and really doing the best that they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have consensus then among council to direct the city's staff to opt out of the state family program and bring back a Wheat Ridge-centric, more enriched benefit program in accordance with our discussion tonight? And we do, unanimously. Does that give you the...
Terrific, thank you. That's exactly what we need this evening, and we'll be back with more suggestions on moving forward with a local plan. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. With that, we will move to study session item number 2. This is the removal of race-based real estate covenants in our city. Mr. Goff.
Thank you. I believe this item was brought up numerous times, but most recently by Councilmember Ohm. And Mr. Dahl and his office have been looking at this for quite some time also. So I know our Race and Equity Task Force has looked at this, and they know we're looking at it. So Mr. Dahl has presented or proposed or provided a memo that was in your packet with some recommendations.
Okay, Mr. Dahl.
Thank you very much. And I also want to recognize former Councilmember Urban, who did raise this some time ago, and it's been on my list to follow up on. And I appreciate your patience in waiting for me to produce this 2-page memorandum. But in any event, let me make a couple of points, and then I'll be asking for your direction as well. We know what race-based covenants typically are and look like, and the city has some dating from something like the 20s, give or take, after the turn of the century, more or less. And in general, you find them in subdivisions usually, or subdivision covenants saying that the property may not be sold to anyone other than the white race or something similar to that. Less often, you see similar covenants that are religion-based. I'm not aware of any in Wheat Ridge that is the case there. It's more often in the West that you see them as just exclusively race-based. But in any event, they do exist, and those subdivisions, of course, were approved in the county back then. And when the city incorporated those subdivisions. And we've done a little bit of research in terms of what can the city do and what's available to the city to do. And the first point, of course, that's made in the memo is no matter what the city does, these are unenforceable. They've been declared unenforceable by the U.S. Supreme Court, the Colorado Supreme Court, and the Colorado Legislature. So I want you to know that and I think you know this, that they're illegal and unenforceable. And you often will see in perhaps your title commitment occasionally when you buy property, that you'll see that pop up as a disclaimer in the title commitment saying to the extent one of these is on this property, it's not enforceable, advising future owners. But the irritation, I think, perhaps, and the motivation here is, yes, but they're still there. And what what do we do about that? And do we have tools to, not only they've been declared illegal and unenforceable, but they're offensive. And is there a way for us to eliminate them and to erase them from title? And there are some ways to do that. And looking at the second page of the memo, this legislature has put together a statute saying that really any property owner can use this statutory provision to record a declaration that the covenant is not effective, removing that covenant from their property. The research I've done leads me to believe that the city can't compel individual property owners to do this, but this is a tool available to them. So within the constraints of the city not being able to compel property owners to add or remove covenants from their property, and I really looked hard at that, thinking, okay, could we make a Chapter 26 land use code requirement that before you get any land use approval, if you're dealing with a piece of property that has this covenant on it, you file a covenant, or you file a document under the statute removing it. And I came to the conclusion that while doubtless I doubt we get challenged perhaps on that, I believe is outside the authority of the city to compel a private landowner to report something with respect to their property. Because while this is the right thing to record, it enters an arena in which the government is saying, you own a piece of property, you need to put something on its title. And I believe that's outside the city's authority. So I thought, okay, what can the city do that edges toward that a little bit and is allowable? And I have listed for you the things that I think we can do. Certainly an easy one as well. The city, as an owner of property, can use this statute and remove any covenants that are on city-owned property. I'm not aware of any, but of course the city comes into ownership of property regularly for various purposes and reasons. And to the extent we see that, it's very easy for the city. The city should simply record that instrument removing that. There, under the heading of a land use code requirement, which is probably a misnomer, I've got a couple of things. I believe that the city could require a plat note on, especially re-subdivision. New subdivisions, we won't have that problem. But re-subdivisions, where we've got old land that has that, it's now being subdivided. And we do see that. The city could require a plat note that says race-based covenants are in fact illegal and unenforceable. That isn't so much requiring the private property owner to remove them, but it requires that to be placed on the re-subdivision. That's as close as I'm comfortable advising that the city can get to requiring people to put something on their title. And I'm comfortable with that. And you can see kind of the line that I've sort of drawn here with respect to that. In addition, the city can certainly facilitate not only providing that plat note language, but facilitate individual property owners to do for their property what the city has the right to do with its, which is to exercise the mechanism in the statute at the top of the memo. And so we can certainly develop the form that says, if you are aware that you've got a race-based covenant on your property, we'll provide a form for you, and you can fill that form out and make it easy for people to do this. I think that's a function the city can also perform. And lastly, of course, there's always a council resolution that would track the state statute, that would track probably more accurately the Supreme Court decisions that articulate the evil involved in having these kinds of covenants out there. That's the range of things that I think the city can do. With respect to the plat note on re-subdivisions, that would be a Chapter 26 amendment that we structure into an ordinance. With respect to things the city can do on its own property or providing forms, etc., that wouldn't require anything like an ordinance. Council resolution, obviously council resolution. So I'd be happy to undertake and draft up any or all of these items if you give me direction to do that. You can do that either on an individual item basis, or you can say consensus to move forward with the suite of suggestions made in the memo. That would do that too. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dell, for that. I see all the work that you put into that. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Not very well. If you speak up a bit, thanks.
I'll try to. So one of the questions I did have is, if a homeowner saw this on their covenant, what are you proposing would be the step? Like, if they were offended, and I think my goal is probably a lot of other people in our community is to have a welcoming community. And we definitely don't want to, have someone that's looking at calling this community and finding this on the covenant and thinking that this is not the community they want to be in. And so what are you proposing if they found this and I don't know, I guess I assume they might bring it to a council member's attention and ask that question, what are you proposing for just a private homeowner?
If it's a private homeowner who owns that property, then the city can take door number, probably number 3 here, I'm adding them up, which is to say, we're aware that these exist. Here's a form that you can use that's consistent with the statute that you can use to record as against your property and when a potential buyer wants to buy your property. This removal of that covenant will show up on title and be a much better signal to a potential property owner, a very different signal to the property owner than what's there now. So I think the city can use its good offices, if you will, to make that form available, and when the question is asked, make it generally known, especially the planning department, because that's where a lot of these things come up. Yes, we've got a form for that, just like we've got a handout if you're going to close your carport. It would be along the same lines. This is material the city provides to facilitate citizens to access its rules and also, in this particular case, facilitate citizen action on a subject matter.
So in short, it would basically, the person would be able to flag it with the form, and then the next buyer would be able to get it removed next go around on a sale.
Yes, an individual property owner, the statute says that I, as an owner, I don't need to wait for a transfer. I can actually file something with respect to my own property. And if I'm a property owner and it's pointed out to me that one of these covenants applies to my property, I don't have to wait for a sale. It can certainly happen on a transfer, but the statute says affecting the transfer or sale or any interest in real property. So I, as a property owner, can affirmatively take action to file the form. It can also be filed in association with the sale of that property. But in response to your question, I heard your question as, you've got a prospective buyer that sees on the title that there's this covenant and thinks, what's this community like? And is possibly not aware of the Supreme Court decisions, et cetera. There's various levels of knowledge about this. But if the individual property owner is aware of that, they can facilitate their removal of the covenant by providing a form for them to record, and that shows up on title 2 and it shows up just a little later in the
Thank you. Really appreciate all the hard work on this.
Thank you. Before I've got a couple more counselors with some questions, but I had one. Then is this covenant expunged from the documents, or is it noted that it is no longer germane, or does the wording happen and then there's an affirmation that it has been removed, or is it just disappear?
The statutory language is that you may remove by recording a new instrument any restrictive covenants which are based upon race. I believe it doesn't disappear from the recorded instruments. The Clerk and Recorder's Office has this covenant, 1925, that says this, and it's recorded at book and page. And that doesn't get expunged or removed. It's a very good question. In the same way that a judge can remove documents from a court record, for example. But what it would do would be a new document that references the earlier covenant. Please be advised that covenant recorded at book and page 1925 isn't legal and unenforceable and is hereby removed from the title of this property, says the new owner by virtue of this form that I've yet to invent that would do something like that. I don't think that you can erase it because it's already present in the recorded chain of title.
But a resident could go through their deed of trust, I assume, with their property, and if it did have this type of covenant, they could take an affirmative action. The city could make that an easy step for them to do to remove this from their.
That's correct.
Thank you so much, Councilor Hoppe, and then Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl, for putting all of these. I
see 5 doors.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I just want to say that I'm in full support of all of them, and I appreciate the time that you put into doing the research and the time. Should we get consensus to move forward, the time that it will take for you to complete this project. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Weaver.
I am also very appreciative and appreciate all the suggestions put forth. I just had a question. Is there any way that not only with a form, but that it can be made without charge to do that kind of thing? I know, right, because you have the form, you have to go to the county. You know, there's a process in doing this by oneself, and I think sometimes people get overwhelmed with, oh, do I have to get a lawyer to do this, or, you know, have this document signed, and who's going to sign it? And, you know, maybe not just a form, but hey, here's how you do it in a relatively pain-free way, because I think there's a larger gap of knowledge of just how do I get something recorded with my property, and where does that live? Because I think it doesn't live in this building, it lives over at the county, and maybe just having a little bit more information on how people can be proactive about doing that. Because I think I'm just one of these geeky geography people who actually reads all the chain of title, and it's actually, as you probably know, quite apparent, and in this whole area often is with these historic documents, and it might be very empowering for people to be able to go through and dig in and read their chain of title. But thank you very much.
Sure. Any form I would intend to put together a little instruction sheet, you know, the little cheat sheet that says here's how you fill out the form. It would have to include a disclaimer that the city is not providing legal advice. And if you have any questions, you should consult your own attorney kind of thing. You always see that. You see that in the forward to every single CML publication. It says that. And we would need to do the same thing, but certainly we can do something even more than an FAQ in the sense of here's what this is, here's why it is, here's how to make it work. You know, there's probably a notary, you can find notaries at banks, et cetera, Then when complete, here's the address, here's the county courthouse, you go to floor number whatever, I think clerk and recorder's on the, but you do all that so that it's as simple as possible.
Thank you. Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Councilor Ohm and Councilor Urban before him for bringing this issue forward. I am one of those people who, when I purchased my house in 2012, I was actually in real estate, so I too read every document. And I actually have with me the covenant that I read that day. Between a covenant about that I can't have fur farms, hog farms, a typo, commercial dog kennels, and some confusing language about the size of my garage. There is clause D that says only persons of Caucasian race shall use or occupy any building on any lot. This covenant shall not prevent the use or occupancy by domestic servants of a different race domiciled with or in employ of a white owner or tenant. And that was one of my first introductions to the city. And so I personally am very grateful that we are looking at proactive ways to get distance from language like this. It was really jarring for me. I mean, I knew that it was not enforceable, but it was still an introduction to my property that didn't feel good. And so I enthusiastically support all of the recommendations here. Anything we can do to facilitate community members like myself who would like that removed, or at least, you know, some language that helps people understand that it's not enforceable, I think is really important to, you know, who we are as a city today. So, and I think the trickier thing is how do we communicate that? Because it's awkward and uncomfortable as a city to say we'd like to let people know that these covenants exist and we'd like to help them erase it, right? Like there's no comfortable communication platform or avenue on that. So I don't think I have any recommendations or solutions, but we're gonna have to find a balance between making it accessible and letting people know it's out there. But we probably don't want to be running around screaming. We're a city filled with these horrible covenants. So I trust staff will figure out how to do that, but I think that's tricky, right? Like how do we make it accessible without you know, calling attention to something that, you know, most people are unaware of. So I just wanted to call that out. So thank you for all your work on this, Mr. Dahl.
Thank you. And Mr. Dahl, is there a recording fee typically at the county to record these documents?
There is. I'm not sure what it is anymore, but I think it's a certain amount for the first page and then usually a lesser amount for the succeeding pages. It's been a long time. When the city records things, it's exempt from recording, although the folks at the front desk up there kind of apply that rule really unevenly in my experience. And sometimes it's not worth arguing. But there is a cost.
Well, perhaps as we look at this in the future, that we might be able to provide a little stipend or something for residents in the city who wanted to do this. That we may, I can't imagine it'd be a great budget buster.
And we can see what the county.
Okay.
Would work
See what
with also,
so,
and there's examples across the whole country.
Yeah.
To Ms. Holteen's point, this isn't. If you know people find out about it more in Wheat Ridge, it's not. It's a Wheat Ridge thing, unfortunately. I think it's all over the country. This is a countrywide issue. I think there's covenants everywhere like this, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, we've had a pretty good discussion. Let's see if we have a consensus to direct staff and our city attorney to move forward with his multiple number of doors and bring us a new proposal to deal with this. So it looks like we do.
Very good. All right. Thank you. You'll see these in various ways: resolution, ordinance.
Okay.
Come before you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work. And once again, yes, to former Councilor Urban and Mr. Rome for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our two agenda items, action items. We have number 3, staff reports. Anything, Mr. Goff?
Nothing else this evening.
Okay. We've gone through elected officials matters, but has anything popped into your mind that you just can't get home and won't make it a complete meeting unless we have it done, and I don't see anything like that. So once again, thank you all for being here. We've had, school is out, so please drive safely and slowly through our city. Have a very happy Independence Day next week. We will not be in session next week, but we will be back on July 11th, right here at about 7 o'clock. So thank you very much. With that, no more business. We will stand adjourned. Thank you.